2.5 billion. Just let that number sink in for a second. That is roughly how many times your heart is going to beat over your lifetime. I mean, think about that. It's this incredible engine that literally never, ever stops working for you, day in and day out.
So it kind of begs the question, right? How are we supposed to take care of this unbelievable machine? What is the best way to train the single most important organ in your body so you can live a long, healthy life?
Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into. We're going to break down the different kinds of cardio training so that you can figure out how to build the absolute perfect routine for whatever your goals are. All right, so let's meet the main players. Think of these as the essential tools in your fitness toolbox. We've got 3 core training types, and each one works your heart in a totally different way. Okay, here's the 30,000-foot view, just so you can see them all at once. First, you've got your aerobic base training. That's your lower intensity stuff, but for longer periods. Then we ramp it up with VO2 max. We're talking high intensity, but for shorter, punchier intervals. And finally, there's anaerobic capacity, which is just maximum, all-out effort for super short bursts. Now let's really get into the nitty-gritty of what each one of these actually does for you. So first up, let's talk about building that aerobic base. You'll hear this called Zone 2 training all the time. And honestly, you can just think of this as your classic feel-good cardio. You know, going for a jog, a bike ride, maybe a swim, at a pace that you feel like you could hold for a good long while. It's that sweet spot where your body's just humming along super efficiently, using oxygen to create energy. And you know what the best part is? You don't need some fancy heart rate monitor or expensive gadget to figure out if you're in Zone 2. Nope. All you need is the good old-fashioned talk test. The rule of thumb is simple. You should be able to hold a conversation, but the person you're talking to should definitely be able to tell that you're exercising. That's it. It's really that simple.
So why is this so important? Why do we call it foundational? Well, yeah, Zone 2 training definitely strengthens your heart muscle. But the real magic, the stuff that changes everything, happens deep down at the cellular level. What you're doing is building more and bigger of these tiny little energy factories in your cells called mitochondria. And when you have more of these power plants, your body becomes incredibly good at using fat for fuel. And that means you have more endurance. You can just go and go and go without getting tired.
All right, so if Zone 2 is all about building that solid foundation, our next tool is about building the peak of the pyramid, and that's VO2 max training. Now, VO2 max might sound super technical, but it's actually a simple idea. It's just the maximum amount of oxygen your body can possibly use when you are going all out. And to train it, well, you got to push yourself into that really uncomfortable, high-intensity zone for intervals that last anywhere from about 3 to 8 minutes. A really classic and brutally effective workout for this is called the 4x4. It's simple. 4 minutes of really hard effort, followed by 4 minutes of rest, and you repeat that whole cycle 4 times. So why does it have to be so intense? Well, think about it like this. If you can already do 50 push-ups, doing one more, doing 51, isn't going to make you that much stronger, right? To get really stronger, you have to add weight. VO2 max training is adding weight for your heart. It's how you build that top-end, raw cardiac power. And that brings us to our third and final tool, anaerobic training. The word anaerobic literally means without oxygen. And that's exactly what it is. This is your all-out, 100% can't go any harder sprint effort. We're talking short bursts, like 30 to 60 seconds. In those moments, your body doesn't even have time to use oxygen for fuel. Instead, it taps into this pure, explosive energy that's already stored right there in your muscles. Okay, now here's where it gets really, really interesting. You might think these 3 systems, aerobic, VO2 max, anaerobic, are totally separate. But they're not. They don't work in isolation at all. There's this amazing crossover effect. For example, even when you're doing an all-out anaerobic sprint, your aerobic system is just waiting in the wings. And the second you stop, bam, it kicks into high gear to help you recover and recharge your batteries. So the takeaway here is that getting better in one area actually helps lift up all the others. So we've got our tools. We understand what they do. The big question now is, what does the perfect week of training actually look like? Let's get practical and move from the what to the how-to. The absolute key here is to understand how these 2 main players work together as a team. Your Zone 2 training, that's like building the deep, strong roots of a giant tree. It's building that fundamental mitochondrial capacity that you need for endurance. Then, your VO2 max training, that's like climbing to the peak of the mountain. It builds that top-end, powerful cardiac strength. And you can't have one without the other, right? You need both the strong roots and the high peak.
And all of this brings us to what we can call the longevity blueprint. Look, for most people out there who just want to maximize their health and live a long, active life, the science is becoming super clear. It really boils down to this. Get in about 2 to 3 hours of that Zone 2 work each week. Do one really tough VO2 max session a week, and then mix in 2 or 3 strength training sessions. It sounds simple, but this exact formula has a huge, huge impact on lowering your risk of all-cause mortality. That's basically your risk of dying from, well, pretty much anything.
But, and this is a big but, you have to remember this is a blueprint, it's not a prison. The perfect plan on paper is useless if you don't actually do it. So the best plan is always going to be the one you can stick with. Let's talk about how you can customize this and really make it your own.
So how can you start personalizing this thing? Well, let's say 1 week you're super short on time, or maybe you're training for a sport that needs more explosive power. Easy. Just swap out that VO2 max session for a quick and dirty anaerobic sprint workout. Or hey, do a hybrid. Maybe swap it out every other week to get the benefits of both. A really great hack if you're crunched for time is to just tack on 5 or 10 minutes of all-out sprints at the very end of one of your Zone 2 workouts. The whole point is to mix and match, keep your body guessing, and more importantly, keep yourself from getting bored.
So there you have it. You have the tools in your toolbox. You have the blueprint for longevity. The only real question left is, what are you going to build with it? How are you going to design the fitness formula that works for you so you can get the absolute most out of every single one of those 2.5 billion heartbeats you've been given?